It is now another weekend and we are back in the shed working on this beautiful GQ behind me. Now, what I want to do in today's episode is keep the trend of paint rolling on the channel. I want to sand this blue color off, I want to get it painted, and I want to get it looking sneaky. I want to play a game. Before you cheeky little buggers skip to the end of the video, go down in the comments and comment what you think the paint color is going to be. I find this interesting because I'm a pretty predictable guy, but I have gone a little bit different on this build. It's actually probably not that different to most people, but for me, it's a color that I personally probably wouldn't have picked on most cars. I went out and bought all the paint. I've also bought a lot of wiring stuff and pinch weld and just little bits and pieces that I think we're going to need. There's probably going to be a few more trips back to the shop, so let's be real, in this episode. But yeah, I'm going to start with that door. I'm going to start fixing the fender because there is a tab broken on the fender, which I'll show you guys in a sec. And yeah, hopefully we can get this thing in paint, guys. I think it is going to look good. I think it is going to look really good, but I'm not sure, and I'm never sure until I actually do it. So let's start anyway over on that passenger door. Then we can do whatever we want after that. There's just heaps to do. Don't know what's going on in this episode, guys, but we are working on the GQ. I have only just sat this fender on to see what was going on, and I didn't even realize, but if you can see right there, there's meant to be a tab that bolts onto the car itself, and it kind of pushes this part of the fender out. Now, obviously, along the ways, someone has broken that, and it has caused the door to contact the whole side of this fender, and you can see it's quite damaged here, which I'm gonna have to fix up. Now, I'm pretty certain that the play in this door had something to do with that tab breaking. I'd say what happened is it jammed up, someone just slammed the door shut without thinking about it, and it has broken this tab off. So I'm gonna have to try and fix that tab, realign all the body angles, which is not gonna be fun, and rebuild those hinges, and then I think we'll be good on this side. Now, before we do that, I feel like we should at least put the front wheels back on first so we can move this thing around the workshop again. I've never actually done a door hinge replacement, but this shouldn't be too hard to work out. That's the pin out, but now I need to get the bushes out. That's only one. Oh, God, there's one of the bushes that has just completely fallen apart. Got a little bit of a predicament here. I'm trying to put the pin, which is this pin and bushing set, into that, and I'm thinking, what is going on? This is a different size. But someone has been in here and played around with this. If you can see, that is actually a bolt through that hinge, the bottom set, and the top set is a completely different size. Someone has put this in, which is a bolt with the head ground down, and yeah, it has been drilled out. So I can't actually use these pins unless I use this whole kit to rebuild just that one side. If I drill out the top hinges a little bit more, one of those brass bushes will fit in the top and bottom sections, so it'll actually have 4 bushes holding that top section in, which will fix this door for now. And in the meantime, I'll probably just order another hinge set. Now, I've drilled this part of the hinge out and then put some bushes in here and then cut them flush. Now this pin fits in here nice and smooth. So that should be a lot better because this was already drilled out and this was sloppy in here. If I get this bolted back up, it should, in theory, work. Oh, it's way better. Actually shuts now. Let's fix that one. That's the main one too. It's only a tiniest bit in the bottom one. I'll try quickly sort this bottom one out and then I'll get back to you. All right, that's both of them done. Still a little bit of play, but door shuts perfectly, so we are gonna move on. Now what I need to do is unbolt this broken bit of metal. You see it's still got its bolt in it, so if I unbolt that, we need to take that over to the fender, try and weld it on to the same spot. We're gonna have to bring it over to here, try and weld it back on there and brace it, and then try and straighten it and measure it out and get that in the perfect spot. Right, that is the tab all welded up. You can see I've kind of like gone over it 3 times and braced it. Now, I don't know if that is lined up at all, but what we'll do is get it over there and sit it on the car and try and bolt that up. If not, we just got to bend it and wriggle it and possibly drill it until she fits. Start getting some bolts in it. It's not even close to being right. What do we got to do? All right, fender is back on and I've managed to fix her up. You can see the door and the fender are quite straight. The gap is pretty well even. And then when you open it up, it is no longer hitting and it is looking really good. So that is 2 of the major jobs out of the way. Now, one of the really major jobs, which I haven't really shown anyone this yet, is this rust down here. So this is the only rust and maybe a tiny bit under there on this car, which is quite good for a GQ, but as you can see, definitely needs addressing. So what I'm gonna probably have to do is start cutting this out. I might be able to like step drill this one here and then fill it. But most of these I'm gonna have to cut right out, reshape some steel and get in there with the welder and start welding everything back together. You can see quite a big gap there. I'm gonna pull this off, pull the carpet up, probably pull the seat out, and we'll have a look at what we're dealing with. Obviously welding near carpet's not a great idea, so we need to get that out of the way as much as possible. But yeah, more rust, more welding, my favorite. I have actually decided to completely rip this carpet out. It is absolutely disgusting. This stuff is just grotty, as you can see how much stuff was under the center console, and on that side it's even worse. I reckon I'm gonna have to put my mask on just to work inside of here right now. It is that bad. I'm gonna continue to rip the rest of the carpet out, basically right through the car, and I'll order another set of carpet. It's really not that expensive. It's like 150 bucks or something for the whole car. So it's a no-brainer to get this stuff out of here, get some fresh carpet in. But yeah, I'll continue on with the stripping. I've got to get these back seats out, get the rest of the carpet out, all the seatbelt stuff, keep it all organized, and yeah, get it out so we can keep going with this paint. So I'm going to take all the door cards off, the locks off, all the window rubbers, door handles, stuff like that, because we will be painting the inside of this door as well as the jamb. So we'll get all that off now. Basically one door finished. Worst part is we've got 3 more to do. Right, gonna have to take these gullwing doors off as well because I want these to stay black. I'm not gonna be painting these to color match. At least I don't think, I don't know. Maybe that would look cool with it color matched, but nah, we'll take them off, eh? As I was stripping this out, found quite a fair bit more rust. You can see the floor through there, also through there. And then over that side, there is a massive hole. A few bits and pieces on the interior, but we will address that in another episode. The more digging you do on these old GQs, the more bloody rust you find. And it's never a good time to find rust, especially a big chunk of it. like that. You can see this isn't welded here. That's seam sealer that is joining that bit. And I'd say that there was seam sealer here. It just seems to always rust around the seam sealed edges. Like in here, this is all seam sealed over the top there, and that's rusting as well. I think it's also why the roofs on these things rust out, is because they're not really welded. They're kind of spot welded, and then they use seam sealer to fill the gaps, and the moisture must get under the seam sealer or something, I don't know. But we've got a lot of rust and we need to fix it. Always put your eye protection on. Every time I forget, I get something in my eye, so don't forget. What I really like to do is cut out a piece a lot bigger than the rust, so you can see I haven't just targeted the rust. That way I can trace this onto a new bit of steel and we can cut it out exactly and pretty much just tack weld that straight back in. Another thing is, you know that the steel is nice and thick where you cut it, because if you try and weld next to the rust, it's just going to blow through. It's too thin. Right, after the cutting, this is what I'm left with. So you can see I've cut nice square edges, nice triangle here, and then a big triangle there. But that is all back to good steel. I've vacuumed out here. You can see this is a double skin, but we won't be touching this inside piece. It only stopped about here anyway. So all we need to do is make some bits of steel to follow these edges. I've got some rust preventative spray that I'm going to spray up in here and all inside this sill before we finish up as well. I've got some 0.8 zinc steel. I like the zinc stuff, so if you are doing this at home, I do recommend that. Now I'm gonna try and make this piece first because this is gonna be the hardest. It's got a radius bend as well as a 90-degree on the side of it, so it's gonna be a little bit tricky to make this, but I think we'll be able to do it. These are my first two main pieces. Now, they're not exactly perfect, but they don't really need to be perfect. You're not really gonna see this, and we can use filler and all that sort of stuff. So we'll go get these tacked in. There's probably a few little other bits that I'll need to make, but the main thing is to get these in first. Right, all that is welded. Looks really ugly now, but I'll get the flat wheel out, start grinding all these edges down. The parts that I'm not really hitting, I'm just going to use seam sealer, and this bit here was already seam sealer. Alright, everything is ground back, and that is actually looking quite nice. I was worried about this inner corner edge, so once we smooth that off with a bit of seam sealer, you literally won't even know that that is there. And then we also need to do this edge, which gets covered by pinch weld and this plastic cover that goes there. I've also drilled 2 holes under here so I can get to the bottom side of that with the cavity wax and some paint. Right, this is looking really good now. I've actually gone ahead and painted it in just a cheap black. I kind of want the paint on there before the seam sealer goes on, but we need to seam seal that back corner, if you can see that, and just up in here. And that is because I didn't want to weld to this pinch weld, and I also didn't want to weld where there was already some seam sealer. So I just need to wait for that paint to dry, and then we can go ahead and do that. But there's still a million things to do, so while that's drying, I'm going to rip the windshield out. But instead of removing the windshield itself, I'll let it sit in there and I'll try and just cut this rubber away. It's what I did with my brother's car. It's also what I did with Cole's, so I know that it works. If we just cut down the guts here, That way you can see we can paint right up to the edge, but the glass will stay in there, and it doesn't matter if we do paint the glass because I'm replacing the glass anyway. So you can see up close, that gives us a really nice edge to paint up to. The rubber kind of sits about here. So as long as we get paint over to here, we should be golden. Now, the other thing that we need to do is rip the sunroof out. And the main reason is that someone has tried, I don't know if you guys can see that gap there, someone has tried to silicone that sunroof in. So I'm just gonna have to try and cut it out. There's heaps of silicone in there. So get the knife out, cut that out, push it out, because we're going to have to reseal this anyway so it doesn't leak or anything. And once that's done, we can then paint right up to this. You can even see a big hole over there. Like, this thing is not installed properly at all. Man, this sunroof is all sorts of messed up. I actually think that it is a factory sunroof. And I don't know how I didn't notice this before, but up in the roof, there's a switch that says open and close on this thing, and it goes up in there, and I never noticed it. So I'm assuming that this is a factory sunroof. Basically what someone has done is gone around and just siliconed it shut, and you can see how much I've sort of pulled out from there. But this to remove is a major job. You have to pull the whole headliner down and then slide it out or something. I read it online, but it doesn't sound fun. Before I go any further, I could just leave this here. I've cleaned up all the silicone, it's taken a while, and re-Sikaflex it back down after it's painted, and we would just have like a working sort of sunroof when you open it. But it would be pretty cool if we can get it working on that function. Now, even if I get it working, I'd say that the sunroof is going to have to come out to be repaired, because why would you silicone it unless it was leaking? What I'm going to do is I'm going to test it with some wires and a battery and see if I can get it to open now that it's not silicone shut, and now that I know that there's a switch there as well. If I could get this thing to open and shut, then maybe down the line we'll pull it out and restore it and replace the seals that are most likely leaking in it now. But I'm going to quickly do that test anyway, see what we can get. Right, I don't really know what to probe, earth and positive, but let's go some random ones, probably blow a fuse. And hear a solenoid ticking when I do that. Nothing's moving. In here, this whole roof is actually sagged down quite a fair bit. I'll say that is to do with the fact that this sunroof is like such a big unit in here. But yeah, apparently it's a huge job to pull it out. I can get the relay to click on both actions, which means that there's probably no power at the relay. So this is like a switch controlling another switch, and the other switch doesn't have power. So that kind of makes sense. I don't know, I think it'd be fun to pull this out and restore it one day. So let me know in the comments if you would like to see that. But for now, we're gonna skip it because this is a painting episode, not a sunroof repair episode. We are pretty much prepped to start sanding. Now, the only major thing that I'm thinking about that is left is this dendrite here that needs to be bogged up. But we can kind of do that once the sanding is done, because there may be other spots that need a little bit of bog that I just can't see at the moment. The downside to this car, it's quite a matte finish at the moment. It's not really glossy, and it's kind of hiding all the imperfections. I'm not going to be too fussy. This is a GQ after all. I know I got a little bit carried away in the engine bay, but honestly, that was quite cheap. This paint that we're putting on this is quite cheap. This is still somewhat of a budget build. We're not going too crazy on the budget. It's just a lot of time to sand and prep. But if we go ahead and bog up all the little dings and stuff, the time's just going to blow way out of proportion for what this build is. So I'm going to get the sander out and start hitting it. I'll probably just do 240 because then we'll be high building, and the 240 is not too coarse, so the high build should fill those little scratches. Once the high build is on, then we can hit it with like a 400 or something a bit lighter. I am so keen to see this in the color and show you guys the color that we have picked. Paint is a very exciting thing, but the steps up until paint absolutely suck. Right, another quick update. I'm not filming too much at the moment. I'm sorry about it, but I'm trying to just bowl this out so we can get through to the fun stage. All of this stuff is so boring, but I have finished the rust repair on this side. Gone ahead and seam sealed up the corner there. And as you can tell, that is free flowing now. you would basically never know that that was even a join. Now I've made it even look like the seam sealer is meant to be there because originally that was a seam sealed joint, just like this one here. So, you know guys, I think that looks bloody mint. I've also gone ahead and seam sealed up all the quarter chop that we did. I've rust proofed the inside of that as well as seam sealed all the welds right round. In the back here, I've gone ahead and redone these joins here with the seam sealer. They were kind of starting to rust, so I thought while I had it out, I'd go ahead and re-hit them. And that is pretty much bringing you guys up to date. Now, I'm out of time today, so I'm gonna come back in tomorrow and start the prep of sanding so we can get onto the fun stuff, the paint. Right, it is the next day and we have a little bit, actually it's quite a big problem with this paint. I started sanding yesterday after I turned the camera off, and you can kind of see this fender is sanded. That went all right, but as soon as I went over to the door, it started gumming up the sandpaper, which is not good. And then I thought, oh, I'll try the other door and see if it's different. But no, this door is exactly the same as well. I don't know if you guys can see all these little speckles and dots, and kind of like the paint just isn't sanding. It's kind of like melting, if that makes sense. There's even a good chunk of it right here. This is probably a good example. You can see all that blotchiness is basically the paint gumming up. I'm assuming, I did a little bit of research last night, I am assuming that what happened with this car is the paint was completely clapped like it is on the bonnet there, and someone has come along and sort of like cleaned it up and then maybe sprayed like some aerosol clear over it, some lacquer, and it's kind of gonna make this job a heck of a lot harder. Actually, here is a good example. That is like lumps of paint. So it's kind of melting the paint and building it up into balls, and that's even on low speed right there as well. If you painted over the top of that, you would see that clear as day. So we are gonna have to sand it all off. Now, I went and got some 120 grit sandpaper because it doesn't gum up as easily, but we can't really sand the whole car down in 120 because when we high build it, it's gonna show up those little sanding marks. So I'm gonna have to 120 the whole car, then go back through and hit it with the 240 before we high build. Then we can run through the paint setup. So we're gonna lose a crap ton of time on this. I might even have to turn this video into a 2-part video because I really wanna get back on that weekly upload schedule. But yeah, I'm a little bit bummed out about this. It's gonna take a heck of a lot longer to sand, but I am prepared to do it because I know that the end result of this thing is gonna be sick. So I'll see you guys in a bit. I'm not gonna film too much of the sanding because it is just boring sanding. I'll be in here for a while just rubbing this car back. So I'll see you guys in a second where hopefully we're making some good progress. I will keep you updated, but I'm just not gonna film the whole process. Bit of an update. As you can see, I'm covered in crap. The shed is so friggin' dirty, it's not even funny. But yeah, still not enjoying it. We have just about done this side of the car. Basically, the roof is just about done in the back of the car, but I've made some semi-good progress. Now, we're not gonna be finishing this up in this video, that is for sure. I'm actually gonna end the video here, but we have this side of the car pretty much done. Basically taking this thing right back to the primer that they've used. So this has definitely been resprayed blue at some point. And then I called my uncle Brad, and he's actually really good with paint. He said that it's probably actually I can't remember, a lacquer or something like that. It's some sort of paint that reacts with the heat. So as I'm orbital sanding, it's kind of gumming up and destroying the pad. So it's just taking a crazy amount of time, but it does have to completely be removed before my paint comes on. The two paints aren't compatible. So basically taking it right back. I haven't done inside the jams yet, but they are still just the original enamel paint or hardened enamel. The roof is pretty much done. They didn't touch the roof either, so that's sanding back super nice. But basically this whole side of the car and the other side of the car are in this heated up paint, whatever it is. There's a good chance that it's gonna take about another full day of just straight sanding to get it back to where it needs to be so we can prime it. So that's why I'm thinking that I'll end the video here. I'll do that through the week, and then that way next weekend we can come back and film the color on this thing. I am bummed out that we haven't got this in at least primer in this episode, but these things happen, you know, you can't really foresee everything. I'm trying to get back to that weekly upload schedule. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next episode where hopefully we are getting this thing in color.